All right, so this is, I hope you can see my screen. So this is an example of, so like I said, the platform we're going to be using to build this is Anything, right? So if you want to also sign up for Anything, just go to Anything, anything.io. You can just Google Anything and you can see, something like this. So I'm going to paste in this in the chat so you can also be able to sign up on Anything if you would want. So Anything.io is a free software. I mean, it's not totally free. There's a 14-day trial that is, of course, you can get started for free. But of course, with the 14-day trial, you can even begin to try these workflows and then determine how valuable it can be for you, right? So that's really how to sign up for Anything. Very simple, very simple thing to sign up on. And like I mentioned, the other platforms that we're going to be using as we build, I will also show you all of that. All right. Okay, so the first thing I want to build here, so for every Anything workflow, or literally any workflow, there must be something we call a trigger, right? So in our case, the trigger that we're going to use for our use case is going to be WhatsApp, right? Okay, so and in setting up any WhatsApp trigger, there are two things you need. First, you need to create like a credential, and this credential are normally obtained from the Telegram software, of which you have to create a bot to be able to do that. And so to do that on Telegram, I'm going to share my Telegram screen so that we can be able to see, how that can be achieved. So if you're going to create anything that can be used on Telegram, if you want to create, so if you're going to create any bots that can be used on Telegram, then the first place you want to go to look for that bot. Normally, you want to, if this is your Telegram, you can see my Telegram screen. First thing you have to come here is to search for what we call bot father, right? So this is bot father, right? So you want to search for this and say something like new bots, to create a new bot. So first you have to choose a name for the bot. I will say ZT enquiry, okay, ZT SME enquiry assistant. And then, of course, after you create the name of the bot, you then want to see something like, after creating the name, want to now create something like a username. So ZT SME demo bots. ZT SME demo bots. Now I have created the bots, right? So the next thing that will now need to do is that you've gotten these bots, and then these bots can then be used for so when we go back to Anything, you can then use these bots to field or create credentials that we need on Telegram. Right? So I'm just going to say, come here, create new credential. And if you see in Telegram bots,
your text is very small.
Okay, can you see it now? Is it better now?
I'm so sorry.
It's better now. Thank you very much.
All right. So as you can see here, the token that was given to us on the ZT on the bot further is what you would then use as an access token here. All right. So I have to extract just the code. Then save. Yeah. So of course it's seen as Telegram accounts because I already had several other accounts here. And then so that is how you create the Telegram trigger. Of course, you have to do it through Telegram. And then, so once that's done, you see that any message that I now type on the ZT SME demo, so all I have to do is click on the bots, and then I'm going to type a message. So before it appears here, I have to come here and execute this workflow, right? So what happens on the back end is that this Telegram trigger is waiting for me to send a message on Telegram. I'll say, hello, I am Ukachi. As you can see here, that message happens here. So any message that comes from any customer and all of that is going to appear here, right? Because you've created that bot on Telegram, and then you have now connected Telegram to what you have on anything. All right. So after that, the next thing we're going to do is just begin to create our workflows. So like I mentioned, that when we send a message, we would have to ensure that the message is in a structured format. So to do that, we'll use the edit fields. We'll use the edit fields node. The edit field node helps us to just make sure that everything here is in a particular structure, and then we can always just extract what we need. So for instance, in our case, we don't need all this information. What we are basically are setting setting fields, right? So I'm going to come here and add fields like customer name, and then customer name. So in cases where you have both the first name and the last name, you can come here and add the first name. Just drag and drop, and have the last name happen here. Then you can create another field. Yeah, click on the hard field. What other important information do we need? Let's say chat ID will be very important because we need the chat ID to be able to, track who we are chatting with, right? Track who we're chatting with. And finally, what we then need is the message text. All right, and just add the message. So here we're just extracting just what we need, and so when I execute this, so all of the information that we had already gotten from here, has just been reduced to just this. So we have reduced the amount of a lot of information that is here. And of course, in anything, you can be able to rename. You can be able to rename and just normalize inputs, right? Just rename this normalize inputs. Okay. And the next thing, so like I mentioned before, so now we've done this, we want to now be able to identify whether the agents, whether the user's message is urgent or not. If it's urgent, we will have to treat that message differently than someone who is just making an inquiry. So if someone wants to really pay right now, right, because I will have to treat them differently than someone who's just trying to ask a question, right? So so that's what we're going to do here. So in order for us to do that, we'll include what we call
We can
this is how this is where the AI now sort of comes in, where it's able to now classify between. It's going to help us classify what is an urgent message versus what is not an urgent message, right? So that's where I begin to use AI, and to anytime use AI agent, just type AI, and then brings out the AI agent. And this is an AI agent, and there's so many parameters that we have on AI agents. Right? So for instance, we have the chat model, the memory for cases where we want to always remember the conversation of the agent, of the user and the agent. And then we also have a tool. So I'll be explaining, how all these things are important. So, and for every agent, right, it's important that there are two things that you need for every chat agent. Number one, you need the prompts. So the prompts are the things that whenever any of you use ChatGPT or something like that, right, you always have to type something and then the agent replies you, right? So in our case, how do we then connect the prompts, right, or the inputs from Telegram into the agents that we're going to build on our platform today. And basically, as you can see, it's just here, prompt user message. And one is agent to classify whether this, the message that the user will send is urgent or not. So to do that, what we're going to do is just to, so here, normally anything gives you a chat, interface to, but we don't want to use a chat interface. We want to define or have, define what chat means for ourselves. So remember that this is a message coming from the user. So we have to do is just come here and drag, right? And then one other thing that we now need to do that will help us or help the agents to act as a classifier is to create more like a prompt, right? A system message, a prompt. So in every AI system you see here today, right? There's always something called a system message. The system message is what determines the behavior of that system, and that is why, some of you, how many of you have used Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT, and all of them? You'll see that in using those systems, they behave differently. Why? Because they all have different system messages. They all have different prompts, right? And so that's why they will always behave differently. Some of you have also used some AI apps. What makes the AI apps different from your normal ChatGPT, right, is the fact that they also have crafted their own specific prompts for their own business use case, and that's why it's able to do certain things that it's meant to do, and which is what we're also going to do here today. All right. So the base models most times are doing the same thing, even though it's just the fact that the models, of course, they can have their own different capabilities, but however, their behavior, the output is dependent. Every company uses ChatGPT, or some company use Claude, some company use different AI models, but the output or the outcome, what their apps are going to do is dependent on the prompts that they give these models to do, right? So now, in our own case, we have defined a prompt that helps us to classify any incoming user message, right? And this is a way to write prompts. So we even have a course on this just called prompt engineering, and these are the kind of things that we teach, right? How to craft prompts, right? Then craft prompts for yourself, for your own personal work. But of course, if you are building agents like this, you also need to craft the prompts so they can give you a specific type of output. And in our case, for us to be super specific, we don't want the agents to, just be to be so verbose or so free around how it's classifying the outputs, right? So that is why one way to always give a structured output, is to define it as a JSON. So a JSON is just don't really go don't really bother about what it fully means, but just think of it as a structured type of output, right? So we just want it to give us the intent, give us whether it's urgent, and tell us, whether it's high confidence or low confidence. All these things can be used to determine, or build a system, right? And of course, in defining these things, we've also predefined what each of the intents should look like. Is it a price inquiry? Is it product question? Is it order complaint, or is it general? Give us whether it's urgency, whether it's high, normal, or low. If it's high, these are the things that we want under high. These are the things we want under normal. These are the things we want under low, right? It's just written. So this might not be exhaustive, but it's a good example. And of course, and as customers begin to interact with your agents, right, you can then begin to make it robust. But this is an example, and yeah. So this is good enough for what we intend to do. And then we'll just go with this. And of course, like I mentioned, we also then, after we've defined the prompts, right, we see that every message that goes into here will be classified into those few things.